Welcome to My Money, Your Money, a weekly talk show on generational wealth, wealth management, and personal finance, and more. Now introducing your host, Miss Brigette Lumpkins.
Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to My Money, Your Money, sponsored by Demesman and Dover Accident Attorneys. I'm your host, Brigette Lumpkins, and I am an executive at a crypto asset management firm here in Miami that's part of the recent wave of New Yorkers migrating down to South Florida that we could talk about another time. I earned my MBA at Wharton and have enjoyed a 15-year career on Wall Street working for such firms as Lehman Brothers, Barclays Capital, and Goldman Sachs, as well as private equity and hedge funds. I've advised private wealth clients, institutional clients, and raised capital. And I am so thrilled to be bringing my experience in the money ecosystem to you, along with my guests who will share their respective expertise in their fields to make you earn more money. So let's get after it. Today, I am so thrilled to welcome Michelle Lynn Adderley. Michelle is an entrepreneur, world traveler, speaker, coach, and consultant with the successful consulting firm, Grosborogh. Did I say that right?
You did.
Financial Group here in Miami, Florida. And she leverages her extensive professional expertise to help connect people across industries, cultures, and languages. So, Michelle, welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Brigitte.
Yeah,
It's a pleasure.
Yes, absolutely a pleasure. And so, this is our inaugural program. So you have the honor of being the first. I have the honor of being hosting this program, and we're going to be talking to different people week to week. But one of the things that is so prevalent in our community is an issue with credit. And so we invited you here today to talk about credit and how to build a strong credit history and the importance thereof, and to maybe debunk some of the misconceptions about what it means to have a good, credit history. So, I'm really curious if you can just, one, give us a little bit more background about you and tell us how you got into or interested in credit.
So, Brigitte, I got interested in credit, and pardon my my voice. I got interested in credit, and I'm always super, super transparent about the situation, because I found myself as a successful business owner struggling from day to day, not understanding how to leverage my cash with my credit, or the lack thereof of credit. I did not have either business credit nor personal credit because I had tons of cash. So I found myself at one time, after some bad business investments, in my, waterfront condo with no credit, and at that time, no money. So I started and I began to read and speak to my mentor, and started maneuvering around the banking system and asking questions and knocking on doors. Because one thing about me is I will knock on the door and I will get the answer. So I sat around the banks a lot and asked all the right questions. So I got that information from some of the bankers. So that's how I started in credit, because I was like love under new management. I was under new management because I had to first focus on myself, right? Yeah. So I started focusing on me, and I was under new management. So that's why I started managing myself and managing my credit. So that's how I got started with this business.
You said something that really resonated with me, and I wonder if it's kind of a cultural attitude that some people have about like not being in debt and not using leverage, and certain attitudes maybe in our community about using credit cards or taking out loans. Was that part of the reason why you were focused so much on cash and not building a credit history? And can you tell us really what specifically were you missing out on by not having the credit history? Like, why was the credit so important?
Well, I had a fear of money. So in our cultural, we don't have, the majority of the times we don't have parents that understand cash. They don't understand credit. So I didn't have that background. So I didn't grow up in a household that at the dinner table we discussed credit. So it was a cash, it was a cash based household. And I had a fear of money because I know that there were times that my mother didn't have. And so she did things, she had a full-time job. She sold Mary Kay, she sold Avon. She did a lot of different things. She was in network marketing way back when. And so she understood that she had to she had to make ends meet. So I just had this fear of money. So when I came into money and I was surrounded around money, my business partner until 2000 and I think it was 2009 paid my bills from actually 2000 to about 2009 because I would just be so petrified about money. I was so fearful of it. So now I practice removing the stress and the fears of money for entrepreneurs and individuals. So I started there. And why it was so important for me to have credit is because, and it's so important for us to have credit or the listeners to have credit, is because you double your money, right? So you double your money when it comes to that. So if you have cash, you can leverage that. You can leverage your credit. I'm sorry. If you have credit, you can leverage your credit against your cash. And man, it's the most beautiful thing ever. Once you learn how to do that, you double up everything. Like I'm a points queen. So I love to teach my clients about keeping your cash, paying your credit on time, and stretching that out where you can then turn those points into fiat. Well, into cash, right? So I don't want to talk crypto terms here. So you can turn that into cash. Okay. I'm sorry.
We'll talk crypto another time. One of these gold necklaces I'm wearing, I bought with points. So
I love it. I love it.
I bought it
I love
with points. I bought a lot of stuff with points. So, I want to go back to, so what were the consequences? You find yourself after a financial setback with a nice property, but no credit. So I guess you can't borrow against the property because you don't have a credit history that's worthy. What were the consequences of that? What did you need to do? I mean, were you really flat broke? Did you have to borrow money from friends and family? What were the consequences? What did you want to do that you could not do because you didn't have a good credit history, because you didn't have a credit history?
Right. As a business owner, it was very, very difficult. So you can't borrow when you don't have credit. So when you're running your business off of cash and you run out of cash. So I have a printing and marketing firm, right? And so I have a huge client, and that client would order and they were on term. So it was no way that they were going to pay me up front. So I couldn't go to them and say, okay, I know your order is $100,000, but can you just pay me at least $50,000? So you miss out on a lot of different things. So if a client comes and they approach you with a large order such as that, you have to decide whether or not you want to go and partner with someone to get that done. Go and try to talk to friends and family to try to leverage their credit, utilize their credit. So it's more of, I'm a very transparent person. So I don't like, I'm not a fake person. So I'm not that person that will go around and say, oh my gosh, I got it all together. I went and I said, and I had to humble myself. And I had to go to friends and family and say, can you give me $10,000 here? Can you give me $20,000 there? And it's the most embarrassing thing ever to have a successful business, but not understanding you have a successful cash business. Like people will see you and at the events and everything else, and they say, oh yeah, she's a successful business owner. You have all of these awards and everything, but you don't have credit. So you have cash, and when that's gone, Brigette, it's nothing else that you can, you're done. you're done. So if you had cash and you had credit, both interchangeably, you can leverage that. You can maneuver around. You can get those things done. But we lost a lot of contracts because I couldn't do 3 and 4 different clients at the same time. I had Wells Fargo, I had some other larger names. So if they called me and they wanted something, I couldn't do 3 and 4 different clients at the same time.
Wow, that's really
so
tough.
that
How did you build a credit history from that point?
Well, I sat back and I learned what were the problems with my credit. What was and I didn't have bad credit. I just didn't have any credit.
Right.
Right. So I had my student loans. I had 4 student loans that were on my credit report. And at the time they were behind, and they were in default because I said, hey, I'm not using my degree, so why should I pay? Right. So that was my mentality. So when they would call me, I said, when I start using my degree, I'll start paying you the money. And one representative was like, ma'am, that's not how it works. And I was like, I'm not using this degree, so why should I pay you? But I learned that there were certain mistakes that were on my credit report. So there were things that were on my credit report, like the addresses that were there, some of the names that were there that were, my credit file had merged with some of the other Michelle Adderleys that were in South Florida. So I had some of those things that emerged to my credit report. So I had to find out how to correct those items, how to claim what was mine and remove what wasn't mine. So it was a lot of trial and error. So once I got to that situation, then, I called some friends and I said, hey, can I practice on you? Reached out to my brother who had the worst credit ever, had 8 foreclosures because he was a part of that whole, 2008 crash. So I said, if I could get the errors off of his credit, if I can go to the government, if I can go to the credit bureaus, if I can go all of these different places that you have to go to in order to correct the errors off of here and get these items removed, because it's not that sometimes you have items that are on there that belong to you, but the law states that the Fair Credit Reporting Act states that if the item is reporting incorrectly, right? So the law states that it has to report correctly. It cannot have any inaccuracies whatsoever. So if your car payment is $752 and they're saying that your car payment is $749 and is 60 days late or 20 days, not 20 days, 30 days late, that 130, because the price was different, the charge was different, or the amount was different, is incorrect. They have to, by law, correct that or remove it. Okay, so there's a statute that states that they have to correct it or remove it. And sometimes they won't correct it within the time, and you can actually have that whole entire car payment removed. So those were some of the laws that I learned and I put into play.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So you're getting a little bit into the details of how to repair your credit. I really am also curious to know a little bit of the consequences for someone who maybe isn't an entrepreneur and doesn't need to offer terms to clients, such as your case, for not having credit, right? Or not having bad credit or having no credit history. And how young is too young to start working on your credit, building your credit history?
Well, I always advise parents to, and this is a very, very tricky situation. So if the parents have great credit or the parents have a credit card that they're not utilizing, right? So they're not utilizing this credit card at all, they can add their kids to the credit. So you can add them, anytime you're adding positive, because you're not applying for credit. Normally you have to be, 18 years old to apply for credit. But to piggyback and that's the term that's used when you add someone to your positive trade line and they're able to get that history, you can add them at any time.
Right.
So
Then
parents
you
can
have to
actually
teach a lot of responsible behavior to that young person. How many people at that age have the maturity to manage that? So I understand why that's really, really tricky.
Right. Well, you don't give the kid the credit card. You
Okay.
maintain the use of the credit card. And it's the same thing if you would have, someone that's going off to college, you want to add them piggyback on a credit card. Now, another tricky thing is you can have bad credit, but you can have one credit card that you don't use and haven't used. Right. And you can add that kid that's going off to college, or the kid that's in the ninth grade, or the kid that's in elementary school. You can add them to that one particular card. Now, their bad history does not, your bad credit score does not reflect on their credit,
Okay.
just the utilization of that one particular card.
Where their name is
Okay.
attached. So yeah, I guess, in that situation, there has to be a lot of discipline and trust in
Very
order
much
to do
so.
that, which is, I think a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down about the psychology of money and how people behave when they have access to money. So I'll have
Exactly.
to have you back for that. Can you talk about, I know we talked a little bit earlier to prep for this call, and I was talking about a friend who is one of those people who who makes liberal use of credit cards and spends 100+% of what they earn and makes a lot of money now. Like a 1%er, but recently paid off a couple of cards and closed them, even though their credit score is probably in the 500 or 600s. And so I, shrieked in horror. Can you explain how that works and what people should shoot for? Because I think some people think, I just want to have one card because I don't want to be tempted. And it's like, well, you need a certain amount of available credit that you're not using.
Right. And I think revolving credit, which are credit cards or revolving lines of credit, the revolving section is so important. And the history is the largest part, of the factor of your credit. So that's why the question that you asked about how soon can you add someone to a kid to your credit? I always suggest, an early age. So they'll have that history. So no matter what happens in between time, they will have that history. So they'll have a credit profile inside the credit bureau for that long period of time. So when we become adults or 18 years old and we go off to college and we get our first credit card, that history starts at that particular time. So some individuals have credit history from the time that they started at 18, and then they go through life and someone tells them that they're not supposed to have a whole bunch of credit. So I advise, if it's available and you can get it, you need to get it, because credit is something that you never want to be able to have. You need and don't have the availability.
Right. Better to have, not need, than need and not
need, not have.
I can relate. I've had my American Express account, the same one, since I was 17 years old. We're not going to talk about what year that was, but I've had the same account continuously that I got my freshman year at Spelman College, and have been building my credit history since then. And I will tell you, and I have credit cards that are basically in a drawer catching dust because I have them just to not use them.
Right, exactly.
And I real emergencies, like I broke a tooth, I need $3,000 right now
exactly
to fix it. Yeah.
Right. So all of my clients know they're not using their cards. So I advise them to get a Ziploc bag, and they put the cards inside of the Ziploc bag and they pour water in it and they put it in the freezer. So I advise them to do that, because if you have an emergency, or you're like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to spend, but you have to thaw those cards out. So by that time, hopefully your mindset has shifted and you say, no, I'm not going to use it. So all of my clients know, once you obtain a credit card, you're going to put it in the bag, and you're going to put it in the freezer, and you stick it in the closet. in the refrigerator.
I wonder if I would have the discipline to do that, because I feel like I would just, call the card company and give them my social security number and say, look at my number.
No, that's why we're working with me. We deal with mindset.
Right.
So
Right.
it's your end goal. Where are you going?
Yeah.
Remember, your credit score and your credit report is your adult report card.
Right.
So when you walk into the bank, do you want them to remember you because you have an 800 credit score? Or you want them to remember you because you need them? No one is going to come and give you money when you show them that you need it.
That is so
Just think
true.
about that. No,
That's
they
so
won't.
true. Now,
Exactly.
so I wanted to go back to what you were talking about, like the mechanics, and I don't want to go too deep into the details here because I think that could be like a whole separate session, and we don't have all night. But what should you do? What should be your first steps, or what are 3 steps people can take when they see those inaccuracies? First of all, I think just knowing that an inaccuracy is not legally allowed. So anything that's even 1 penny off as an inaccuracy, or the term of the lateness or whatever, if it's 30 and should be 60 or whatever it is.
Right.
So if, what is the first step? Do they have to call all 3 credit bureaus? Should they call the credit card company first? Should they have an attorney? Should they just call a service and pay? What should they do?
They don't have to they don't have to call an attorney and have to pay for a service. First thing that they need to do is you have to now with COVID, every month you're allowed a free credit report from all 3 credit bureaus, right? The major 3 credit bureaus. And you can go to
Which are, can you name those for our viewers?
Equifax. So the 3 major ones are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Those are the 3 major ones. But there's one that's called Innovis. That's the 4th one that's coming up, is raising this little head up. And then you have databases that are owned by all of those credit bureaus, have other databases. So when you're clearing out your credit, you need to order those reports. And some of those reports, I'll briefly go into it, are check systems. You need to order a check systems report. You need to order early warnings report, LexisNexis report, Clarity report, CoreLogic, and Factor Trust. So that covers all of the credit bureaus. It covers all of their sub credit databases that hold information. So if the information is incorrect on the major bureau, is more than likely incorrect on one of their databases. Okay, so you're allowed to have a 3 credit bureau report every single month, which you really don't need to have that every month, but you can go to annualcreditreport.com. And so once they go there, I would say take a look at all of the information, and it's pretty lengthy, each one of them. So you have to have the patience, and that's what most people just go and try to hire someone to get these things taken care of. But you have to have the patience to go. And I always get 3 highlighters, and I get a green highlighter, and I highlight all of the names that are incorrect, right? And then I circle all of the inaccuracies that are there. And then I will take a highlighter, another color highlighter, and I will highlight the report number. And so when I take all of that and I get the inaccuracies, when I teach people how to do their credit themselves, and get all your inaccuracies. And so then when you get, just write it, handwrite it. It's the best thing to do is handwrite it. And the reason why you want to handwrite it is because you don't want the system. There's a system called eOscar that the credit bureaus use, and we use 2-digit codes because I'm also a debt collector, but we use 2-digit codes to communicate with the creditors, right? The subscribers, the creditors, which is American Express, Capital One, all of them. So we use 2-digit codes to communicate with them. So we'll do a 2-digit code that lets you know, Mr. or Mrs. Equifax or whatever, that this client was 30 days late, right? We use another 2-digit code to say that you're 60 days late. So what I would tell you to do is handwrite it. So eOscar, you can't scan, they won't be able to scan it, and that computer can pick up the information and it'll automatically reject it and say verified. Okay, because the credit bureaus have up to 30 days to respond, up to 30 business days to respond to whatever it is that you send. So you want to send it handwritten along with the attachment of your credit report with everything that you say is inaccurate, because now you have to have a human being with some feelings, okay, reviewing
it's
your
a
report.
stalling tactic.
It is.
Okay.
So you want, yeah, so you want to be able to have someone, all of this paperwork, looked at by a human and not by a computer. So most people think by typing everything up and sending it over, then, they're going to get the results. You're not going to get the results. And when you dispute online, I know that was one of the questions about disputing. When you dispute online, you give up your rights to be able to come back and sue the credit bureaus when you go online and you dispute any inaccuracies.
So you should always put it handwritten in paper, the old-fashioned way.
The old-fashioned way.
Okay.
And you can go ahead and say, and you don't have to listen. You don't have to explain what happened. All you have to do is say, this is inaccurate. It's up to the credit bureau to find out what the inaccuracy is. Don't ever admit to anything. When the creditors or the collection agencies call you, because remember, that's me. Don't ever admit to anything, because you can admit, get into an agreement, and now that history starts back over. So there are 7 years, depending on between 7, sometimes it's up to 7 to 10 years. Public records are 10 years on your report in Florida. Now, other states are different, so you want to look at the statute of limitations. So the statute of limitations states, like for Florida, is 7 years for the last date of activity. Okay? Not
so something. So let me get this straight. So if I have an Amex card and I was 30 days late 6 years ago, but I still use the card.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. But if the card was delinquent and you were in Amex jail, which is the worst card to ever be in jail, I always call it in jail. You don't want to ever go to Amex jail, okay? Because they're an excellent card to have, and they have some redemption programs. But you want to make sure, if you are delinquent on anything and you happen to go into a collection status, that is the last time from last activity. So if you call them and you make an agreement with them, even if you don't pay it, you make an agreement with them, your statute of limitations starts from that time, not the last time that you were late, the last time of last activity. So you don't want to enter into any agreements. You don't want to speak to them. Okay. You don't want to send in any money because you don't know if there were any inaccuracies that went from the major creditor over to the collection agency. You have no idea. Okay. So you don't want to communicate. You just need to say that this is inaccurate. I'm not aware. It's up to them to prove to verify that debt belongs to you or that debt is accurate. Okay.
That is so insightful. And, we're coming up on time. This has gone so quickly. And I feel like we are just getting started. I have so much more I want to talk to you about, but we told people we were going to be done in 30 minutes. So I'm going to ask you to come back so we could do part 2.
Okay, no problem.
We'll find some time for you to come back so we could do part 2.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can get into some other things, and maybe we'll have some viewer questions for a part 2 that we can get into. But I really want to thank you so much and ask you if there are any sort of parting words that you want to share, sort of in summary, about this really, really important issue and what the sort of top 3 priorities people should have when it comes to having a healthy credit history.
Well, I think the timing, understanding your statement dates, the most important thing. Understanding when your statement dates are, when your due dates are, and put everything at a minimum on automatic deduction.
Yeah.
That is the top thing that you need to do. You can pay extra, but you never want to be late, and always put your accounts on automatic deduction 2 to 3 days prior to the due date. and then find out when your statement closing date is, because that is the number, whatever your total is at that particular time is the number that will report on your credit report. So, and you want to make sure that you stay under 30% utilization.
Right.
Okay.
So if
That's
you have
the
total
most important.
outstanding credit of $20,000 across your various cards, you don't want to
Mhm.
use more than $6,000.
$6,000. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And you can transfer the highest level of debt. When you get a credit card, look for 0% APR for 18 months. So you can transfer
Right.
debt from one card over to the other, so you can go ahead and pay as much as possible towards that debt to make sure that the numbers are coming down. Okay, so that's the best way to handle it, understanding your statement dates, your due dates, and your minimum balances, because we never want 30 days late on anything.
That's right. That's right. And plus, there's also the fees that accrue, and then you pay interest on fees.
Right.
It's
Right.
not just the adverse impact to your credit report, but
Mhm.
also just the extent
fees.
of it and
Right.
the interest rate that usually gets raised when you
Right.
are
And
delinquent.
your interest rate. Exactly. Because most people don't understand that if you are 30 days late, and there's a disclosure page that comes with every credit card. Read your disclosure pages, read the statement, read everything. Because if you're late sometimes with, say for instance, you have an 8% credit, 8% interest rate. If you're 30 days late, that interest rate can go up to 29.9%.
Yeah. Is that the statutory maximum?
There is no statutory maximum.
Okay.
Right, because each credit card, so you have predatory lenders that
Mhm.
I've seen some interest rates that are 35, 32, 35%. So it depends on what your credit score is, and what their rules are.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, thank you for
okay.
these gems, Michelle, and
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's definitely a pleasure for me, and I'm sure everyone who's joined today. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us for the first episode of My Money, Your Money. I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday at 7 p.m. to talk about wealth building and wealth generation.
Mhm.